room as well. Right, online we have got Councillor Eugene, welcome. Jess from Wakakotahi, welcome. And Angus from KiwiRail, welcome. And also in the room we've got Councillor O'Leary, Chair Barry, Councillor Sarah, Councillor Deputy Mayor, I should say, Liz. You're confusing me. Councillor Rodney, Councillor Phillip. So cool, thank you, welcome. And we also have our new accessibility rep, Oliver. Welcome. Now we need to be kind to Oliver. He's only just recently moved to the area and he's been in his new job for just over a week, 2 weeks. But yeah, really looking forward to your contribution, so welcome. All right, and also welcome to all the staff online and in the room as well. All right, we are going to move through the apologies. We've got a few apologies on there. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Sarah, and a seconder by Councillor Rodney. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. All right. Now we're going to move the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Angela O'Leary and Councillor Rodney. Right, so we're going to move the agenda and all the reports be received and that the meeting can sit longer than 2 hours. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. All right, and the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any issues with the previous minutes? I'm happy to move those ones. Thank you. Oh, maybe someone else? Those were you then? Yep, thank you, Councillor Rodney. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right. All right, moving on to our first agenda item. We have got the Regional Public Transport Plan, the pre-hearings update. So, Andrew, thank you.
Cool, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll just provide a very brief update on the process to date, and then take the report as read, and if there's any questions, happy to address those. So the committee will be aware we've embarked on updating the Regional Public Transport Plan. This committee's shaped the direction of that draft plan. It went out for consultation in July, with consultation closing at the end of July. We're in a process of reviewing the submissions, well advanced on that now, with a hearing scheduled for next Tuesday, and a subcommittee of this group set up to hear those public submissions as well. So I think there's just shy of about 30 submitters that want to present. We've received just over 200 submissions overall from a range of individuals and institutions. Overall, if I had to summarise the tone of the feedback, I think the direction of the plan is really well supported via submissions, but there's quite a lot of gold in some of the submissions in terms of things we should think about for amendments to the plan. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Right, if there's no questions, highly unusual, we will move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
Which is, thank you, Andrew, which is the Super Gold concession. Oh, no, because we did it all at the start.
Oh, is that what that was?
Because we're only receiving reports when we come to a decision. We will have a bit more detail. Otherwise, it's a bit clunky. Trying something new. Yeah, could do. Welcome, Ewan. That's all right. Right, we're on to the next item, which is the update on the Super Gold concession administrative charges.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Chair.
Trudy.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I take the report as read, and I'm seeking approval for an instatement of the standard $5 charge to Super Gold card users who are applying for a B card to entitle them to the free time anywhere, anytime on any of our Hamilton or wider regional public transport services, which is inclusive of the rail, buses and flex. So as I say, I take the report as read, but in brief, we've been using the B card for 2 years now. A combination of factors, including the free travel with Super Gold holders from the 1st of February, along with the recommencement of Te Huia since the end of January, has seen a significant uplift in applications from our Super Gold user group, which is fantastic. However, to administer all of these applications with the waived fee, it's a manual process. So we've sought to take stock, do a review on where we're at now and whether our operating model is sustainable. And just to add, a significant amount of applicants coming out of Auckland now as well. So we have the opportunity with the wider consortium, which provides the website portal, which is self-serving, for those applicants to apply through that portal, but it does require a $5 administration fee. So just seeking from yourselves today approval to take that administration fee forward and apply that to Super Gold.
Cool, thank you, Trudy. We've got a couple of people wanting to speak. Councillor O'Leary.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Trudy. Just for complete clarity on my part, the $5 charge was waived for Waikato users, but now it's going to, but for everyone else, they had the fee, and now this will be for everybody. So this will be Waikato users as well.
Yes, that's correct. And the reason it was waived in the first place was in the Waikato region and under the old sort of busset scheme, the actual Super Gold card was accepted as the ticket for travel. But for us to get visibility on patronage and also align the way in which, you know, our customer base should access the services. That's why, we've brought it into line.
And it's a one-time fee for new cards only, or?
That's correct. However, if they're lost, yes, that charge would apply again. But if they're broken or what have you, obviously it's replaced free.
And I know one of the next report is on the nationwide ticketing system, and I've seen the timeline of the rollout of that. Is it cost effective to do this now with that coming on stream by 2024, or that's bearing if we are not in the trial, which starts earlier than that, or could we just stay with what we're doing now manually and wait?
Look, that's a good question. I believe that 2024 is rather ambitious for Waikato to be coming onto the NTS. So I'd like to suggest that, it is acceptable to roll this out now. I think we'd have a good 3 to 4 years
Okay, all right.
to
Yeah.
run under
Okay.
the B card
Yep.
system.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thanks, Trudy. So at the moment, just wanted to be clear on what's happening at the moment. So you can get a card, B card, for $5 online, but is it because it's free to get it at the transport centre that you're getting most of your requests there?
Yes, so what we did from the outset was we had waived the fee. We simply had a pop-up on the website that redirected all applicants through to our 0800 number or our service desk. And we've been continuing, to service those inquiries there. Unfortunately, with technology, it was configure one way for all. So we just had to come up with a workaround there to support the policy that we put in place at the time.
So they could have still bought one online for $5. But
They could have. That option was always there, but
okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you. And I'll raise something in the next item around just making the cards maybe more easily available physically at different locations. But my other question, Chair is welcome to rule me out of order because it's slightly stretching scope. But noting that we have this excellent concession for super gold card users, I'm wondering if, out of fairness, we should be considering school children. And Tauranga has been already doing this for a number of years, I think now, with having concessions just for the time that kids go to and from school. Is that something we could get more information on for a future meeting or workshop to understand how that's going for them?
Mark, would you like to comment? Yeah. Why don't we just share?
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, I think would be really useful, given the amount of public discussion is happening around the role of fares and public transport patronage, to bring something back to the committee at a future meeting. Those who were around at the time will recall that there was a free public transport service trial for a service within the city area, which generated all manner of operational problems. Tauranga City's youth-free travel also generated similar problems, which is why they've pulled it back to limited hours. Yeah. And international evidence is very mixed on whether or not it sustains increased patronage. Yeah. But I think it would be very useful to bring back to this committee perhaps a summary of findings around the role of fares in patronage and the role that free fares have, or heavily discounted fares have, as part of that as well. So I think that's something that we can then put on the action list for a future agenda.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, and to understand, for example, whether constraining to just school time travel has fixed some of those problems, or if they're still ongoing. So that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Martin, online.
Yes, obviously with leave of the chair, clearly, because I'm not a voting member. Just a question I have that may be helpful. I noticed when the AT introduced charge for their super gold card holders, there was some sort of pushback from what I would respectfully call some grumpy people. Presumably we're going to have a really good comms strategy to underscore that super gold card holders get the deal of the century, and that this is a reasonable, realistic charge, and obviously totally endorse what Sarah's just said. So just in terms of the comms of this, that's all being helpful.
Absolutely. Yes, we won't be rolling it out overnight. We'll definitely step through a comprehensive comms strategy to support this. Because yes, any introduction of a fee, I appreciate, could generate some pushback. So no, we'll manage that well in the comms and give people plenty of time.
No, that totally support. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. So can a Super Gold card holder apply online and their Super Gold card be authorised online?
Yes, so as part of the self-service portal, the verification process is taken care of online. There's a direct link to the Ministry of Social Development to validate and verify the details of that Super Gold card holder are correct before they can proceed any further. And if there's any issue, it's rediverted back through Ministry of Social Development, or of course they can come to our counter or phone us.
Okay, thank you. So would that also, once the Community Connect concession is in place, would that be a similar verification process for those people?
Yes, it will. That's not underway yet, but will be very shortly with the sort of extended half price fares through to the end of January.
Fantastic. And I just had a question sort of following on from Councillor Gallagher's question, just around the timing. I just wonder if we alter the resolution slightly to give an indicative timing of when that fee would be introduced. And that would help our comms strategy, bearing in mind that you might have a rush on before that closing time. So yeah, what do you think would be a good lead-in time?
Look, I believe we need at least 8 weeks, to manage a comprehensive comms strategy. So yeah, I would propose December. But Mark may have a view on that as well. Hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think as Councillor Martin and others have suggested, making sure that it's well communicated and in fact perhaps spreading any peak we might get as people understand that a fee might be charged over a slightly longer period of time so that the team don't have a massive influx. I think it probably would be beneficial for us to look at the start of December. So if we head towards that as a timeline, that gives us plenty of time in respect of communications. It's not a large imposition on the team if we do get a bit of a peak over that time. So it's not the kind of thing that we have to worry so much about, kind of, the gold rush effect that you might have with other implementation of significant changes in fees, for example. So I think we'd be comfortable with managing it in that way.
All right, we've just popped the resolution up on screen. Does that look all right to the committee?
Does it need to say do we sort of need to revoke the Waikato users part of it? Does it need to say for all or no? Because this is changing it to online, isn't it?
Well, it's everything. It's already charged online, I believe.
Yes.
We already charge some outside users outside of the region.
Yes, so everyone else in the consortium are already charged, but it would align the Waikato region to that charge, and therefore.
Right.
Do you want to add in
for
the
the
Waikato region?
It's needed.
I think it is needed.
For clarity,
yeah.
Because otherwise it implies that no one else should have been paying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just one fish hook if we do that. So we have applicants for Super Gold Card scheme access to the Waikato network from outside of the Waikato, so including from Auckland. Now, while we operate a consortium for the cards, for the ticketing system and technology, if we were to limit this resolution, or if the committee were of a mind to limit this resolution to Waikato, it would create ambiguity about Auckland applicants for B cards for use in the Waikato.
Yeah, no, that's not
So,
what I was
yeah.
saying.
So I think I understand the point Councillor O'Leary is making. My suggestion would be to simply leave the resolution as it is, because effectively what that does is it brings us, our whole system, into line with the wider B card consortium partners. So that would be my suggestion. It's just that little bit of nervousness I have about creating a bit of ambiguity about applicants for Super Gold Card use within applicants from outside the region, their applications for Super Gold Card use within the Waikato.
I was more inclined to lean on the words for all new users. Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may ask a
Oh, can you
question?
flick on your,
Sure.
otherwise the people online can't hear you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, could staff explain to me again, using relatively small words so I understand, why on earth would we have been permitting people who don't reside in Waikato enjoy travel benefits within that region? Why would someone from Auckland, as you've just articulated, be making an application for a benefit that is usually restricted to those in the Waikato geographical area?
I'm happy to answer that. So just to be clear, the specific benefit is having access to a free Super Gold Card, a free B card, rather than access to the concession itself, which is funded nationally. And quite simply, having a significant number of applicants for Waikato Super Gold Card use from outside the region wasn't anticipated at the time that the policy was that this policy to waive the charge was introduced.
Maybe through you, Chair, just clarify it, that the Super Gold Card is a national scheme, right? So when you apply that to a local scheme, you can't suddenly give it limitations. So it has to be seen as, it doesn't matter where you are from, if that is related to a scheme you're operating within a region, then you're either in or you're out. So I see the clarity that this has and why it's done like that. I understand it's for new cards, so that's probably the, if you like, the clarity that's required. But otherwise, I'd be saying this is the way to go.
Thank you, Chair Barry. Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm happy to move the recommendation as it's up on the screen there. I think if we start putting in too much more detail, we'll just create more confusion. I think keep it nice and simple. And I'd also like to just mention that there's been some good commentary around other parts of use of the service with school children, etc. But that's probably for further discussion. So I'm happy to use this because it is a superannuance card to support them, and as Councillor Gallagher mentioned, it is still the deal of the century. I don't know anybody that would not want to pay $5 to be able to have free public transport if they so choose to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Patterson. Right, we're going to put the motion. It is moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by myself. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is the nationwide ticketing system. I believe we have a presentation from Waka Kotahi. Yeah, Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will pass over very shortly to Waka Kotahi, Jess Andrews, to take us through this. But the resolution that will be put at the close of this will be effectively seeking endorsement for the Waikato to move in step with the rest of the country into the national ticketing system when that becomes available to us. The reason why it's necessary for us to do that is because the approach Waka Kotahi has taken has been a very collaborative one, carrying a huge amount of the development cost and risk associated with the new ticketing system, and effectively taking an opt-in approach to public transport authorities to use the system rather than compelling us to transition to a system. But I think hopefully what you'll see from what Jess presents to us, the benefits and opportunity that moving to a national ticketing system are really significant, probably one of the biggest potential shifts for the national public transport system that we will see possibly within, at least within this the 7 or 8 years. So with in mind, what will happen after, if the committee's comfortable with that, that will come as a recommendation up to the Regional Council at its coming meeting as well. What that will enable us to do, again, it doesn't yet commit us 100% because there's still a little bit of time to go, but it does give Waka Kotahi certainty about the scale that they're working at when they're talking about development of things like business cases for investment and the further stages of the ticketing system. But I'll let Jess take you through what's around the corner and the work currently underway.
Thank you, Mark. I'll pass over to you, Jess. I've read through the report and the presentation as well, and most of my questions were answered along the way. So what I think we'll do is we'll have the presentation and we'll save our questions to the end. So over to you, Jess. Thank you.
And I actually have somebody who is coming to do the presentation for me who is not currently online. So I'm going to give it a start, but the expert is joining us. So I think you'll get a lot more benefit when he joins in. Do you want me to share my screen and I'll go through the slides as I go through, or the advisor's going to do that?
Whatever's easiest for you.
If they could do that, that'd be great. Is that possible?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So then, as Mark touched on, the national ticketing solution it's been in the pipeline for quite some time now, with a kind of natural approach to one ticket for all users on all modes across the country. And the idea has been that Waka Kotahi and central government can facilitate a platform that can then move through each of the councils as they come through to it. So the idea behind having a national ticketing solution is that it will create more, a more accessible, there we go, so that second slide there, thank you, James, safer and more sustainable transport system. It'll make it much easier for people moving through. So when you're moving between modes, when you're moving between cities, this one card will work across the country. Just a second, I'm just chasing it. All right, there we go. And we've seen evidence from overseas that indicates if you can make it easier for people, if you can make the one card work, then they're more likely to use public transport both in their own city and as they move around the country. Obviously, that's really crucial as we're trying to drive mode shift and we're trying to increase patronage in order to address carbon emissions, and road safety and the other issues that we're trying to do with, the high dependence that we have on single occupancy vehicles in particular. What we're looking at is PT authorities like Waikato Regional Council will gain a digitally enhanced system, which gives them choice and simplicity, and will give you the functionality you need to effectively manage that and integrate into the broader system. And there'll be a lot of data that sits in behind that, which means we have optimized services, and you can see what where people are going, what they're doing, how they're using your services, and that allows you to target your investment better, and from a national perspective, the National Land Transport Fund to be targeted to where we're going to get the best impact in the region from a public transport perspective. Moving down, James. So the core work on the development has been done in collaboration, and I think that was touched on. So we've got representatives from key councils all across the country. All of the regional councils have been involved through the consortium, and then AT Wellington and Canterbury have been key partners involved in that, with Waka Kotahi leading it. And it's fair to say there's been a huge amount of work and involvement from a lot of people feeding into this to make sure it is something that's going to work on the ground. Going down. So a lot of this comes down to, how we're going to achieve this. A lot of it comes down to timing. So if we keep scrolling down. So right now we're looking at how we align this over time. We know that the current systems that we've got, things like B card, the AT hot card, the snapper card in Wellington, aren't giving us all what we need. We're not getting all the data, we're not getting the information that we need, and we're certainly not getting the integration. A number of the IT systems sitting behind there at the end of their life or just have been put in place to kind of patch a problem, but ultimately to make them work long term, they're going to need a substantial change, and that comes at huge money. And when we're doing that 5, 10 plus times across the country, that's a huge investment. Therefore, what we're looking to do is, instead of do that, one at a time through each kind of private one, we're looking to work in a partnership where we can get the scale that helps flow across the country. And it does mean that there's some benefits where some of the bigger players like Auckland, the benefits that they achieve are felt for smaller councils, especially outside of our kind of tier 1 cities. What we've seen through the Regional Council Forum that I talked about before is a real collaborative approach to that, and a real excitement from our regional councils about supporting something that's going to be a benefit for all, and where the other players can get the benefit from that collaboration. And then the other element which we're all aware of is customers expect modern technology. So increasingly, particularly our younger generations, are pretty demanding as to what they get from their technology experience. And, in the days of pay wave, online payments and systems, that's kind of what people expect now. People don't expect to have to go into a kiosk, and they don't expect to have to do things manually. And so part of this is also about catching up to those expectations and to meeting that customer demand. So again, we can make this easy and seamless for people. We know that is going to keep shifting. Technology never stops, and there's going to changes are going to keep happening that we need to be responding to. But what we've seen is we can put in place an agile system that will allow us to respond for that. And we've got to start somewhere. We know we need to start now. And so this gives us the ability to get started and to create that shared platform for everyone. So some of the key outcomes that we're looking to work for. So obviously improve customer experience. That is, the most important part of it, and that flows on to what you're seeing in the other two, because if people are having a better experience, if it's easy for them, they're more likely to use public transport. So that is the kind of core requirement of this. That is the aim. Then I'm not going to kind of keep go into all of the detail, but we know that if people have a good experience, they're more likely to use public transport and alternative modes. And so if we can get those people happy, they're more likely to catch a bus, they're more likely to get out of their car and go. And then the other one that I touched on earlier is that people are going to get better insights and they're going to get more flexibility. So yourself running the system, you're going to get the information you need about usage and allow you to optimize the network, to look at your schedules and understand the need and the demand, and to manage fares accordingly. That also allows us to act in a more responsive way to how public transport users are using the system. And we'll be able to use this to go into things like fare reviews, your public transport, regional public transport plans, and the planning that we go forward, and also decisions like the one we just had about Super Gold cards around making sure we've got the right concessions to drive the right behaviour, because we've got instantaneous high quality data that tells us how these changes are affecting the use of the system. And from a simple local thing, it allows things like getting off a bus onto Tahuia and then getting on another bus in Auckland, all to happen with one card instead of 2 or 3. So that's, just practically going to make a really big difference. I know we've had a lot of feedback about that one. Next slide. We're also looking that, the idea is by working together as a collective that we're able to get more value for money. I talked about the fact that a number of the systems that we have at the moment are coming to the end of life and need upgrading, or, are being maintained individually at their own cost. So by doing this together and creating one national ticketing scheme system, we're able to bring all that together to get the best outcome across the whole country, and share that outcome between the big and the smaller cities, and support having the right the information to have the right buses and the right services in the right places. And it also means that we can see fare revenue and fare costs in a national New Zealand-wide basis rather than simply at a regional one. And the idea, by serving the infrastructure that goes around this, we're also hoping to reduce fare evasion, so we are actually getting the revenue for the usage. The next one is around a digitally enabled system. So we're looking at new technology that will integrate better with other new incoming technology. So I touched on this before. We know that the world is moving, really rapidly in the digital space, and that we need to, work to a space where we have something that is a shared platform that can be integrated easily into the other things that are coming towards us and the changes that are going to come in the technology world in the next, 12 months, let alone 10 years, 20 years. So we want something that's going to integrate with existing systems and also with what's coming towards us. And this would allow us some flexibility with potential integration with third parties who might be able to build on the NTS to provide a wider set of services. Finally, it also looks at supporting health and safety. So it responds to things like COVID disruption. So you could potentially look at doing things like contact tracing, reduces the need for cash, which we know was a risk factor during COVID, and ideally reduces the interaction with the drivers, which allows them to stay on time, focus their attention on what they need to do with those high need users who need their attention, and the rest of us can just swipe our card and keep on going. Sorry, James, thanks. Next slide. So what is the NTS? And welcome to my colleague Kelly, who's joined, who will help keep me on track and answer any questions we've got coming in. So we, being Waka Kotahi on behalf of the collective, are buying a single ticketing solution for public transport, and that'll go across bus and ferry trips in New Zealand. The idea, simply put, if we actually talk in terms of technology, and I see Charles has just joined, so I might hand over at this slide, if I may, Charles, and you can pick up from here. This is Charles Ronison, who's from Whakatahi and is the head of the NTS program, who's supposed to be presenting today, but we ran a bit ahead of schedule. Charles, I thank you so much for coming, and I might hand over here and let you pick up from this bit.
Thank you very much. So whereabouts are we in the presentation pack?
So we're just talking about what are we buying. So we've just moved into, it's up on the screen here, but we are buying the single ticketing.
Right, yep, gotcha. Okay.
Thanks so much, Charles.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. we are buying a single ticketing solution for public transport right across New Zealand, and I think this has a huge benefit for all travellers around New Zealand, irrespective of where you travel. It will be the same access and the same system. Tourists coming into the country will be able to immediately access the system wherever they come into the country, using EMV technology, which is obviously MasterCard, Visa, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and whatever other devices you might have an EMV chip on. For example, you can now apparently get an EMV chip with in a ring, so that you can actually just touch your ring against the reader and it will pick up that you've climbed on. The system is account based, which is also particularly important. So whereas at the moment when you tap on and you tap off, it takes the money off your card. What this system does is it records all your journeys for the day, and at the end of the day applies any concessions that you're entitled to and makes a single charge overnight for your travel for that day. So it is very simple. It's the way the rest of the world is moving in terms of ticketing solutions. Come in, next slide, please. So I think I've probably already covered that. Really, you tag on using, we hope most people will use credit and debit cards as their way for accessing public transport, but there will also be what's called a white label EMV card available as a transit card. For example, those under 12 are unable to have debit credit cards, and so need an alternative solution. Also for those people who perhaps don't trust themselves or don't have appropriate credit and debit cards, they will also be able to use a transit card. The advantage of the transit card is that people are going to be able to top up in a number of different places. So we have a system, a retail network system that we're putting in place that will have something like 3,000 to 3,500 places that you can top up your transit card, as well as online. So anywhere you can buy a Prezi card or get a Vodafone top up for your phone, so dairies and places like that, you'll also be able to top up your transit card. So it makes it very accessible for people to be able to put just a little bit of money on their card if they want to, just before they travel. They don't have to hold big balances on it as they currently do. Next slide, please. So this is pretty self-explanatory. People have payment choices. They have the lowest fare guaranteed, so they don't have to think about whether they should have bought a day pass or individual tickets. The system will work that out once they've done all their travel for the day, and will come along and say, okay, this is the best fares that we can give you for the day, and charge that. Across the country, it will be a consistent experience. Whether you travel in Dunedin or Hamilton or Auckland, it all works the same way. And also the system will be able to split fares. So for example, on your Hamilton-Auckland train, if part of the fare needs to go to Waikato Regional Council and part needs to go to Auckland Transport, the system will have the ability to calculate that and pay the appropriate amount to each of the authorities without any need for anybody to be involved in the background. The same applies for the Palmerston North to Wellington train. And I think as we get more and more of these interregional public transport services, the system will help to work with that. From a operational side, we think there's an ability to reduce cash on board. AT has already removed cash from their network. And Wellington is trialling it on certain routes. There are some places where that will not be appropriate and it will not work, and that's fine. You'll still be able to have cash if you want to, but the less cash we have on board, obviously the safer it is for those people that are operating the services for us. It also will be easier to adopt new technologies. So into the future, who knows what might come along. Potentially in Asia now they are testing facial recognition, where as you approach a counter, the camera picks up who you are and just automatically generates the payment. those sort of technologies, as they're developed, we will decide as a group operating public transport whether or not those are the sort of things we want to have on our ticketing solutions. One of the big benefits from a central government perspective is the ability to consistently and quickly implement new government policy. For example, the half price fares that were put in place a couple of months ago could very quickly have been put in basically overnight for the system to apply from the next day. So it makes it much easier to get that consistent experience. Also around those on community services cards, we can create a consistent experience across the country for them. Next slide. So this is really just a slide that says, you know, if we do the minimum, which is basically to stay pretty much with the existing systems we have, versus the new NTS system, there are a number of benefits that you get. For example, correct journeys before being charged. As an example, at the moment, if you swipe on to the train and you forget to swipe off and the train's going for another 20 stops, at the moment you get charged to the end of the line. This system will have intelligence in it that will look at it and say, hey, Charles gets on the train in Wellington and he normally gets off in Featherston. He's forgotten to swipe off. We will correct the fare and only charge him to Featherston. So from a customer experience point of view, it's much simpler. The other advantage from a Waka Kotahi perspective, but also from a PTA perspective, is that we will get consistent national travel data around the country. So at the moment, when we're looking at opportunities to expand and develop the PT network around the country, we're not necessarily comparing apples with apples. Under this system, everything that comes through will be the same and reported in the same way. Next one. So funding, which is something very dear to all of your hearts, it is proposed that basically Waka Kotahi will fund the development and the operation of the system. The reason for that is that the majority of the system costs sit with our financial servicing and ticket suppliers, and we will negotiate those contracts on a national basis and we will pay for them. From a PTA perspective, you will receive the full revenue collected. We are not charging you anything for providing the service. You will bear the costs of transition with FAR funding and also your what we call front office. So if you have a call centre for people to call in when they're travelling on your network, providing support to customers, etc., that will be on a FAR funded basis. But those are the only costs that you will incur from a PTA point of view. Are there any questions on that?
If we can keep going to the end, please.
Sure. Okay, next slide, thanks. Jess, can we go to the next slide? Thanks. So we are about to move from a steering group to an NTS governance board to operate the NTS. That governance board at this stage, it is proposed to have 2 AT, 2 Waka Kotahi, a Greater Wellington, Environment Canterbury and a regional consortium representative, and we will have 3 independent directors as well. The independent directors will be appointed by Waka Kotahi, but it will be in consultation with PTAs. So if you have people that you think have particular skills in your area that match the skill gaps we have, then we will look to include those people when we're considering the governance board going forward. Obviously within Waka Kotahi, we have a management team set up and we are expanding it all the time. And there are a number of working groups which all the PTAs are involved in terms of deciding what the best way for the ticketing solution is to go now and into the future. The design we do for Environment Canterbury will deliver about 90% of the functionality for the whole system. So we will have all the PTAs involved in that to make sure that your requirements are being met. Thanks, Jess. We are looking to implement the NTS in a phased approach. The only thing we are sure of at the moment is that Environment Canterbury will be the first PTA to come onto the system. The timing for that will be determined when we finish negotiations with the preferred supplier, which is expected to happen within the next month. Beyond that, we're not sure at this stage whether it will be AT or GW that goes next. In terms of the regional consortium, it won't be a big bang. You will come across as agreed piece by piece, because obviously we need to change equipment out on your buses as you come onto the system, and we don't want to do that all in one hit. So we will negotiate that with the regional consortium to suit you in terms of how and when we bring you onto the system. My expectation would be that it's likely to be in 2025. Next slide, thanks. So procurement is coming to a close. We are just about at a point to have all the master service agreements ready for the steering group to recommend to Waka Kotahi that they are fit for purpose, and Waka Kotahi will execute them. We are establishing the program as part of your pack of information that will be available to PTAs as you consider signing the participation agreement. There is also the detailed business case that was endorsed by the Waka Kotahi board on the 7th of July. So the funding is in place for this now. It is only subject to all PTAs executing the participation agreement. We are not allowed to sign the master service agreement with ticketing solution provider until all PTAs have signalled their willingness to become a part of the national ticketing solution. There is a high-level operating model that is a dynamic document that will develop and change over time, but the principles of the document will be available for you to see as you make your decision about joining or otherwise the national ticketing solution. And in terms of implementation, all parties will have detailed transition and implementation plans. In each case, the PTA will need to sign off the transition plan that you are happy and comfortable with it. There is an off-ramp there potentially if the cost of that is extraordinarily burdensome. But as Mark Ratcliffe, our Chief Executive, a couple of years ago indicated to PTAs that if for some reason it is particularly burdensome, then Waka Kotahi will look to give you potentially some additional support if necessary to make sure that we can get everybody onto the new system. So we are confident of success. The ticketing solution provider that we are working with has a global reputation. It has implemented account-based EMV contactless ticketing in a number of big cities around the world. They are currently operating in 2 key states in Australia. They have a number of major metropolitans in the United States, and they're also operating on London. So what we are confident about is that they have the knowledge and they have the ability to deliver a solution that will work for New Zealand. Their interest in New Zealand, because we are, as things go, relatively small, the interest in New Zealand is particularly doing a national solution, which is not something that they have done previously. They've done a lot of big urban implementations, which include multiple parties, but this is the first national system they've had the opportunity to do. The other thing that appeals to us with the preferred supplier is that we have the ability, once we've got the ticketing solution in place, to expand the services that we might be able to run through what we call their payments engine. So in that regard, there's talk of congestion charging for Auckland, potentially congestion charging for Wellington, tolling, parking potentially. So there's a number of other things that potentially we will run through this system to look to actually create almost a transport account type situation where all your transport costs for a day appear as a single charge through a single account. So those are developments for the future. Mobility as a service is another one that has great possibilities with the system, where potentially for what is known as first mile, last mile, you get off the bus at a hub and you might have an Uber pick up 3 or 4 passengers off the bus and run them home. We can integrate that into the system in terms of payment, providing either a subsidy or in fact potentially paying the whole fare depending on what the situation might be. Next slide, thanks. So that, sorry, I jumped ahead. So that's just a little bit more about what I was talking about there in terms of the opportunities to integrate with other national and transport initiatives. And I think that increasingly will be the way that we move. Wahako Tahi is keen to see a digital payment system across the whole transport system in New Zealand. Next slide. That is the end of the presentation as such. So happy to take questions, answer any queries, anything that you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, really informative. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and thanks Jess and Charles for your presentation. It all looks very exciting. I have a few questions to start with. One was in regard to the accounts and I guess linking that to a device or a card. What's the process? What would that look like? For example, do I at that stage my account would link to say PayWave on my phone, and then from then on I only just need to use PayWave to get on and off?
Yeah, that's correct. So a couple of things around the accounts. If you have any concession of any sort, you will need to register your account and your device to get the concession. If you're an ordinary Joe Bloggs adult like you and me, it's up to us whether we register our account or not. But when you tap onto the bus, it takes your card and turns it into a token. So it basically mashes up the numbers so that nobody can get access to your credit card, debit card details, processes everything. And each time you use that token, that will home in on that particular account. And you using your credit card can go and have a look at your account, irrespective of whether you've named it or not.
I see. So essentially, I don't need to log in, have any account. I could literally just go, I'm going to take the bus and get on and use my credit card or PayWave as long as it's got contactless and you're on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the benefit of this system. You know, people who are very occasional users do not need to find cash. They don't need to have a special card. They can use the card or payment method that they use for anything nowadays.
That's great. Is there, in terms of people having multiple devices and ways that they might pay, and they might pay differently each time they get on the bus, that's not an issue, I guess, in terms of.
No, you could effectively have 3 or 4 tokens linked to you if you have a couple of debit cards and a couple of credit cards. They will all be treated as separate accounts. The one thing that we do need to be very careful about, and we have seen this from overseas experience, is to make sure that people tap on and tap off with the same card. So one of the risks is multiple cards and you get your wallet and you go and touch it against the reader, and as you get off you turn it around and touch it the other way and it reads a different card. That is a problem. So we will be doing quite a bit of education around making sure that you use the same card to tap on and tap off, but you don't have to use that same card every time you travel.
That's fantastic. I was hoping it would enable this, so that's really cool. Another question I have is, in terms of making it easy to purchase cards for people who don't have access to smartphones, cards, etc. You talked about having a large-ish number of retailers where you can top up. Will you also be able to directly purchase a card at those places too?
Yes. Yes, you will.
Good. And last question for now is just in terms of, I assume you don't need consistency with fares across regions, so it will still be up to regional councils to set their own fares?
Absolutely. Fares and routes are absolutely at the discretion of councils. We have no input into that. All you need to do is tell us what fare to apply to what journey.
Excellent. And say, for example, with concessions, it's relative. Well, right now we can have a concession for individuals, but what we've not been able to do with our closed loop system is have like a family concession, you know, so that it makes it more economic to take the car for a family of 5 than take. Sorry, right now it's often more economic to take the car for a large family, but here there might be the opportunity for a family concession. Will this enable that?
Yeah, my understanding is it will enable that, and in fact that already operates in Sydney now.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Oliver.
Hi, I just had a couple of questions. First of all, how much engagement have you had with the disabled community? And have you considered how this is going to work for them?
Yeah, access customers are one of our key focus areas in terms of the customer experience. There are a number of things that we will incorporate. To be perfectly frank, that's where we need your experience as PTAs to tell us what experience you need to create for your access customers.
Thank you. And just one more question. Will there be a representative of the disabled community on the governance board?
Don't know at this point. It's one of the issues that we have listed in the requirements for the governance board. We also have listed in there Māori representation as well. We will balance all of that to make sure that we get a board that is able to represent right across the customer base.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. Councillor Gallagher.
Oh, thank you. With the leave of the chair, just so I understand, in terms of the user, you can put a credit card or a phone. In terms of the overseas experience, obviously the efficiency of the device in the bus or on the train, etc. So I'm imagining people, you know, queuing up, fumbling in their wallet, getting the card or using their phone. Clearly, there's a lot of work around just how good the terminal points are to receive different methods of payment. Particularly, you can imagine in peak time with a whole lot of queues of people lining up.
Yeah, the requirement for the readers is that they can process the card within 400 milliseconds.
Right.
So it should actually be faster than the current experience.
Yeah, so there'd be a huge education in terms of, you know, particularly when you sort of have different devices. Just the other thing with concession cards, and obviously not just dealing with, you know, the gold card holders. Obviously, those concession cards will still exist. And what happens in the case? Can you just emphasise where Sarah talked about family concessions in a certain area, or disability, or, you know, special concession cards? That process still exists in the system, obviously, and
Absolutely. So we can set the concession up in whatever way it needs to be set up. So if, for example, the disabled community were entitled to 25% travel cost, then that concession would be set up. They would do all their travel for the day, and at the end of the day, it would charge 25% of the fares that they should have paid. Likewise, interestingly, with the Super Gold card, if you register your Super Gold card against your credit card, you will not need to produce your Super Gold card when you get on the bus. You'll just flash on with your credit card, flash off. If you're travelling in the window of free travel, then you won't be charged anything. If you travel before 9 or 9:30, whatever the time is, you'll be charged whatever the appropriate fare is.
So that means obviously you can have a concession card, but you can then link it with your credit card, but you can use that concession card. Do I take it?
You won't be able to use the concession card to get on the bus. You will need to use an EMV token, which means a credit card, debit card, phone, but it loaded or your transit card, but that will have loaded against it the concession you're entitled to.
No, and I appreciate that, because obviously, I'll give you an example. The wonderful Waikato has 24-hour concessions for gold card holders. The AT, of course, you still have to pay during the morning peak. Clearly, there's a variation. So I would imagine what you're saying, what you're confirming is there's going to be huge communication campaign at all levels, just to basically educate people in this new system and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the regional consortium, you have the advantage that potentially AT or GW and ECAM will have gone ahead of you. We will have a lot of learning from the communications that they have put in place that we will be able to draw on. We're also looking to work with the credit card companies, because from their point of view, there is benefit in them promoting swipe on, swipe off with your credit card, potentially to help them to pay for some of the cost of educating the public as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, without being gratuitous, education is crucial, because there are a number of people who, have different levels of skills in this area. A big change, but thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Rodney.
I just had a bit of a question on what's the overseas experience on basically bad debtors, like people clipping on, and then I understand it's taking the money off your account at night. There not been any money in that credit card or in the cards that they've used. And then also, is that bad debt going to be borne over the whole of the national card system, or just on the areas that it's been used in?
The experience overseas in terms of bad debt is really, really low, much lower than we expected it would be. It's under 1%. So from that point of view, we don't see a major. What happens is, if you rack up a $10 debt today and it's declined by the bank, then we retry over a period of days, not every day, through to the 28th day, and at the 28th day it will be written off or charged back to the PTA that provided the service. Waka Kotahi will carry no debt.
Thank you for your question. I just had a few questions. You mentioned that it will reduce fare evasion. Could you just talk a bit about that, please?
I think the thing around fare evasion is that it is very easy for revenue inspectors will have probably phones, but there will be a revenue checking device so that they can very quickly check whether people have got on and got off and paid. I don't think that problem sits so much on buses. I know from the GW experience that their train system is where they get the greatest amount of fare evasion. AT has fixed that predominantly by putting in gates at their big stations. Wellington, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that they think their fare evasion on trains is somewhere running around 15%. They have put Snapper on rail onto the Johnsonville line, and they have seen their fare evasion drop by about drop back to under 5%. So with revenue inspection officers, it's very easy for them to check whether or not you have tapped on, and if you don't tap off, then the system will make the appropriate charge.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. Around the transit card, will they be app-based or website-based?
At this stage, it will be website-based.
Okay.
So, or it will be a physical card. We may in the future develop it into an app, but we tend to, the overseas experience is that those that generally have a transit card don't necessarily have the technology available to them to have it as an app-based card.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And last question, just around our total mobility service. Would that be something that this would cover?
Not immediately, but for the future, yes, absolutely. I know that that is an absolute nightmare for councils to administer, and potentially this has the ability to allow for people to pay their share and charge the balance back where it needs to go.
Thank you. And if there's no further questions, yeah, thank you for your presentation and your time today. It was really
Thank you.
informative.
Hopefully that was useful.
It definitely was. No, it's great to have everyone up to speed. Yeah, it's good things are in the pipeline. So thank you for your work. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
I have an additional motion for this item. And so I just wanted to raise the issue I've already discussed with Mark this morning, but I wanted to raise the issue of the availability of B cards currently in Hamilton in particular, but it may be a wider issue. Currently, if you want to get a B card, you can order it online, but there's a delay of a number of days before it will arrive in your post box. Otherwise, it appears to only be 2 locations, unless I've got this wrong. But from the website, there are 2 locations where you can buy a B card, and that's the Transport Centre and the university. So I would like to, I'd like to ask if we can look at some options for making the B card available to purchase at other locations around the city, for example, at our libraries, community facilities, and there might be other appropriate locations, but to make it easier for someone on the day to be able to get one.
Just a moment. No, just a moment, Ewan. We'll let staff respond, and I'm just.
Through you, Madam Chair, since Councillor Thompson raised the question with me this morning, I've been in touch with our PT manager, Trudy, who will be able to provide a little bit more detail about access. So it's an ongoing program to try and improve access. And so I think if I can ask for Trudy to provide a bit of information on the current state of things, might provide a bit more comfort around what the plans are for improving that access.
Thank you, Mark. Just on that, Councillor Thompson, we're currently looking at some other outlets within Hamilton. Just so you're aware, there's a cost associated with the devices that we provide those outlets, but we're working directly within it at the moment to secure some additional devices, but particularly with a view to put together an action plan to roll out some more agencies within the Hamilton area, because we know that is that is where our concentration is of passengers, and enabling access to the B cards is directly through these retail outlets. So, yeah, I mean, libraries, the base, Chartwell, those are sort of the key hubs we're looking at the moment. Encouraged to work with council because anywhere outside of that does attract a commission charge. So yeah, okay. Happy to communicate further once we land access to those devices and where they will be placed.
Thank you, Trudy. What I would recommend is that we put it on the action list, we keep it off the formal part, And we've still got one more meeting this triennium, so staff are happy to report back how that's progressing, and we can hear about it more next meeting.
Excellent.
Does that sit well
Yep.
with you,
No,
Councillor
I'm very happy
Thompson?
with that, thank you.
All right, so we've got a mover and Councillor Wilson. Do we have a seconder? If not, oh, thank you, Councillor Phillip. All right, all those in favour?
Sorry, Madam Chair, are you not debating the issue? Assuming somebody moves.
There's nothing, with the motion as it is on the screen, the original motion.
You move a motion at the regional council, there is a debate.
For the chair.
Well, I'm just asking a procedural point. Yes, I'm asking understanding whether or not you have a debate. It's a simple question.
We can have a debate, that is fine. Is it about the matter of the recommendation that we recommend up to the regional council that we support adopting a nationwide ticketing system for PT services?
In most democracies where you have a standing order, have a discussion where elected members can express an opinion on a motion. And I'm simply asking as a procedural.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson, I didn't see your light on, that you were wishing to speak.
Madam Chair, it is just simply asking you a normal process in these meetings.
Yes, it is a normal process. Members would indicate that they would like to speak by putting their lights on.
My understanding most processes. Questions are finished. I'll now open the debate and that's led by. If that's not your policy, then as long as it's consistent with the standing orders, but I think you're saying that we are entitled.
Yes, we are entitled to a discussion. If you would like to speak, can you please put your light on?
Thank you. I'm speaking in favour of the recommendations. Having read the report, I think this is a logical step to introduce what is a globally recognised way forward in ticketing. I note that for the last 5 years, you've been able to get in and off on the metros and the underground in London using your card, feeding into the system. And I think it will revolutionise the way New Zealanders access public transport. I encourage and I hope every other regional council in New Zealand embraces it. I am concerned that I think there is some indication not all will do it, and that will mean they will be the outlier, and that would be unfortunate. But I think the report was good, and I think the system is ideal, and certainly I think it's in our best interest to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, just in the notes, and there was discussion around if not all PTAs adopt this procedure, will that mean that the national ticketing system won't get off the ground? Or are there ways of getting around that?
Through Madam Chair, I can probably provide some response to that, and then perhaps Chris or Waka Kotahi might be able to provide some further clarification on the extent to which that's a critical element. But in terms of confidence in the vast majority of public transport authorities taking it on, we have confirmation from Canterbury, who are moving ahead. Greater Wellington, Auckland Transport's likely to be the last because of the timing of their current contracts with their current ticketing provider. And also in respect of the B-Card consortium members, the B-Card was actually introduced as a stopgap, quite a long stopgap, towards a national ticketing system. And at the moment, we have a high degree of confidence that all of the B-Card consortium members will join, partly because we can't afford, any one of them couldn't afford to carry the cost of a B-Card system on their own. And that includes the Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, sorry, I'm just reading the back of my B-Card, Hawke's Bay, Horizons, Invercargill, Nelson, Northland, Otago, Taranaki, and ourselves. And outside of them, I think that covers all public transport authorities. There may be, I'm not sure whether there are any outliers from that.
Just another question on that, and it's probably outside the agenda. Is there an opportunity to get a B-card system for entering the Waikato Regional Council building? It'll make it a lot easier.
Sorry, Madam Chair, can I just, on process, and I should have read your I think I did read your standing orders at the start of the term, but now that we're in debate, are we allowing to go back to questions, because it's not usual process? Correct what? Are we, it's not usual process? Or,
Speak. The chair has allowed discussion. Obviously, we're at the point where questions have been dealt with. So where the chair has now allowed some discussion, and it's up to the chair to decide when that discussion has gone far enough and to put the resolution. So at the moment it rests with the chair as to, but I would say that there be no further questions of staff because that time has passed. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Barry, and thank you, Councillor O'Leary, for for doing that. Right, if there is no more discussion to be had, which I don't see any lights or any hands up, we will move the motion. So all those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. All right, next agenda item, which is the network planning update. Thank you, Andy, and Martin and Phil.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. So fairly brief update from myself today, but I have some good contributions from my colleagues at Hamilton City Council, Martin Parks and Phil Hazeldine as well. So just to say, the driver shortage is unfortunately ongoing. It means we're still unable to operate a full timetable. We have been short of about 20% of the drivers required to operate a full timetable since around February this year. And that situation has not shown any signs of improvement. Despite this driver shortage, staff have been ongoing in their efforts with regards to developing the bus network and consulting on potential changes. We recently went out over the past few months with a programme under the banner of Refresh, which was briefed to the committee previously. We did receive over 500 submissions on that consultation, which was an absolutely excellent response. Some very valuable feedback in that that's been received for that consultation. So staff are currently working their way through that feedback with a view to coming back to the next committee with some recommendations. I will just touch briefly on the implementation of the high frequency routes. Although, as I said, unfortunately, we do have a very serious driver shortage at the moment. The 20% that we're short is actually short on the timetable that we would have been running this time last year, and that doesn't take into account the improvements that we wish to implement in the future as well. So the Meteor is the new high frequency east-west route operating between Rotorua and University Silverdale area. We are planning now to start that service from Rotorua Hub, as we understand that the Wetany link, which is currently under construction, is likely to be completed by the time that we are able to launch that service. Also on the Comet, service improvements that we're looking at making would provide a 10-minute frequency in the peaks between the hospital and Te Rapa. and improved 15-minute service at weekends. Again, with the driver shortage, unfortunately, we're unable to implement those improvements. However, we have got underway with some of the consultation around the southern end of the comet, and some good feedback received on that. Waikikitahi, I understand, are about to go out to tender for the Glenview Bus Hub, which is a critical part of infrastructure required to deliver that service, and we were expecting that facility to be completed around the time of the new year. I will now pass over to my colleague from Hamilton City Council, Martin Parks, to give you an update on the biking and micro-mobility business case. Martin.
Andy, just before you do, are there any questions for Andy? Councillor Thompson.
Andy, the ongoing driver shortage is an extremely big problem. What help are we seeing coming through with the borders opening up somewhat more?
Yeah, I will probably defer any questions on driver shortage and driver availability to either my colleagues, Trudy or Mark. Yeah, just really a commercial issue with the operator. Would one of you like to? Probably long and short is no impact yet. So the Connections Committee, this was some time ago, we did correspond with the then Minister for Immigration in relation to the thresholds and requirements to meet certain visa categories. There was, from the Minister at that time, no real appetite to adjust that to align with current, to open the window under those, the same types of categories as are available to other skill shortage areas to bus drivers. That notwithstanding, the changes overall in more COVID-related restrictions on people entering and exiting the country, we haven't yet seen that flow through into driver availability.
Okay. Is it, I mean, is it worth us picking up, picking this up again in terms of trying to have a conversation with both the Transport Minister and Minister for Immigration at the same time? Oh, same. Well, there we are. Gosh, what is he doing? Yeah, it's now the same person. So.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, what I would say is I think there would be a reluctance by the government at this stage to broaden that conversation ahead of arriving at a national standard around bus driver pay and conditions, which is currently underway. Okay. And we're hoping to see that resolved within the coming months. Now, I know I've probably said that to this committee several times, that we're hoping to see that framework landed, but we understand that it is imminent. And with that, we will then, the Minister for Transport will then be able to put their other hat on and I'm sure reevaluate whether or not the employment, those conditions align with the requirements of those other visa categories. Really briefly, there is a wage threshold for accessing particular categories of visas. And so depending on where the national agreements land around standardisation of pay and conditions, they'll then be able to have a look, is that above that threshold? And if it is, then not only will it improve driver wages and conditions, but it will also mean that new drivers into the workforce from overseas may have an easier path. So I think the right thing for us to do at this stage is to support and enable the completion of that piece of work, and then following that, it will then have another look at whether or not the immigration issue still remains a bottleneck. I think the other point I would make is that irrespective of changes in those settings, it's going to be a gradual climb out of this. This is certainly not going to be something that's going to be solved overnight, but we hope that with the agreement, with the landing of those conditions, we should at least start to see a closing of that gap that Andy spoke to, from around up to 20%. We should start to see that close, and that will enable us to reinvigorate some of the improvement program that we have.
Okay, thank you. And final thing is, do you think we're doing, because I've had a number of people say, hey, I thought the comet was going to start and it hasn't, and when's it going to start? And then I've given a date and then it's changed. So is there, are we able to refresh the comms on this to let people know, look, these changes are going to happen, but we just don't have a date at the moment? Because people have been, a lot of people were excited about the changes. We consulted and now nothing's happened.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I think we would absolutely be able to do that. One of the items that's coming to the final Connections Committee will actually be the outcomes of the consultation on the network refresh. And I think as part of that consultation, some of these things go hand in hand. There are aspirations in that refresh consultation for some of the new services that we hope to get up and running that will require additional drivers to deliver. And so we'll have to work very carefully on that communications, because we want to have these plans ready to go when when the moment's there to strike. It was the advice from the committee, was not to hold back on pressing ahead with the planning. But you're absolutely right. Communications about the time for implementation will be critical. And we'll be able to bring some indications of how we intend to do that to the next committee meeting.
Thank you.
All right, I just had a couple of questions as well. Sort of along similar lines to Councillor Thompson's. Just in that, within the Hamilton network, we are seeing, lots of services that have been dropped. And especially with the flex services not being able to even, run those ones sometimes, it's quite disappointing. I was just wondering what tangible evidence can we see from GoBus that in their program to retain and recruit drivers in the Hamilton area?
Again, I think I will defer that question to Mark. Sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair, we know GoBus have undertaken more recently some very deliberate and direct recruitment drives within the Waikato for additional drivers, both for their urban operations, so our operations, and also for other drivers for other services that they operate. But short of the publicly visible recruitment side of things that we've seen, I'm not sure of anything beyond that, unless that's all I can say.
Okay. Are we able to lean into that a little bit more and maybe put a bit more pressure on GoBus to up their campaign to recruit and retain drivers?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think we can absolutely offer to coordinate with GoBus and to have a conversation. We have regular operational discussions with them, but we can absolutely have a conversation about as to whether or not we can assist with, promoting their promotion of driving as a career.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Dow.
Mine's just a comment really on the driver shortage, because I know a bit about it, but we're not too bad in our company. But I was talking to an HR lady from a company in Taranaki, and they offered Netflix and a free haircut and a meal, and they filled all their vacancies. So maybe GoBus needs to, it's apparently it's worked great guns, so. Which is surprising, but so.
That's an interesting point, eh?
So they're out. I think they're out there. It's just a matter of finding them. But anyway, if you need a haircut, there you go.
Is that an ongoing thing or is that a one-off? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. We might pass on to Martin for his part. Thank you.
Thanks very much. A quick update on the biking mobility stuff. Also a couple other points I wanted to raise as well, if that's okay. So the biking and micromobility business case currently is in with Waka Kotahi. It's going through their internal processes for review before it heads off to their board or at the end of September. Noises coming out of Waka Kotahi are pretty positive around it, which is great to hear. So if that gets approved at the end of September, that opens up a fantastic opportunity for the city to get some really fantastic biking facilities rolled out across the city. It's probably the biggest shake-up of cycling for Hamilton City for forever, I would say. So that's good news going forward. So the business case is really it's a 30-year vision for cycling. So we've developed up a network plan for the whole city. But what we're looking for in the business case is also a 10-year investment plan that's going to be approved by Waka Kotahi. So that gives us some certainty going forward over the next decade for investment in cycling. The other thing I just want to quickly mention is we're working on a number of public transport infrastructure projects at the moment to support the Comet and Meteor services. So they're going through some scoping, design. They're at various stages at the moment. Some are getting into a bit more detail, and I'd like to thank the support that the Waikato regional staff have given us through that process. And the last thing just to mention is I suspect you're all aware of the Climate Emergency Response Fund. There's a transport package within that response fund of about $350 million that Waka Kotahi are administering. And currently there's expressions of interest open for applications to that fund. The timeframes are extremely short though. Expressions of interest have got to be in by the 19th of August. Hamilton City Council are putting in an application that was approved at the Infrastructure Ops Committee on last Tuesday. And so we've also got a list of projects that we're currently working on that will go into that application. The application for the projects and the details have got to be in by the 2nd of September. So again, tight timeframes to turn this around. There's a number of public transport projects that we are going to push into that application, and happy to bring those to the next Regional Connections Committee, just to let you know what we've put forward. But we're just working on the details of that at the moment.
Cool. Thank you, Martin. Are there any questions for Martin? Martin, I just had one. Just around your report on the safety and the expected outcomes of the 10-year plan. It says to reduce deaths and serious injuries to bike and micromobility users across Hamilton by 40%. Can you just talk about how that relates to the Road to Zero vision?
Yeah, look, it does tie very closely with that. You know, cyclists, well, vulnerable road users are overrepresented in our crash stats across the city, particularly in the deaths and serious injury category. So obviously, the quicker we reduce that number, the better. I'm hoping that's a conservative figure. We'd like to bring it down a lot quicker than that figure that's in our business case, but that really depends on the amount of investment that's made into the network going forward. I mean, recent stuff that's happened on our network around cycle injuries is well known in this room. So we've got a lot of work to do in that space to improve on that. And yeah, 40% is, we'd like to improve on that, definitely.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further, I think we're hearing from Phil as well.
Good morning, everyone. Here to give you an update today on two projects, the Access Hamilton transport strategy and the Metro Spatial Plan. So two good news stories, one a very, very good news story, which I'll start off with, and I'm conscious that our two driving elements from our elected member body are here, so I don't want to steal thunder here. But at the Infrastructure Committee this week, our refreshed transport strategy, which is Access Hamilton, was passed unanimously, which was a fantastic milestone, I think, for Hamilton and wider. So we've presented on Access Hamilton several times to this committee and also acknowledged the huge staff and elected member inputs from the Regional Council into helping us develop that process. Happy to delve into some of the detail of the strategy if required, but essentially just a good news story, thumbs up, a nice way to end the period. So outside of a few minor updates, I suspect that will be a live document in the next couple of weeks. I'm happy to stop for questions there, shall I? Carry on.
Carry on, I think.
Carry on. Metro Spatial Plan, again, reached a very constructive milestone at the last, so we're now in the future-proof space, at the last future-proof implementation committee, where the strategic direction of what we've been working on for over the last year was adopted. So that was the focus on bus rapid transit along several corridors and a variety of supporting business cases that formed a 30-year recommended programme, really. The business case part of that process is being wrapped up as we speak, so we should be done and dusted in the next couple of weeks, and that includes finalising some of the cost estimates, finalising some of the projects that potentially could make up that programme. It includes, I think, worth pointing out, a sort of a deep dive into all the future-proof partners' existing funding programs. So basically the last LTPs, to see where the current proposals for each partner actually do align with the proposals from the Metro Spatial Plan, and we're finding that at least 50% of projects do. So that basically is a good news story in terms of it shows that we were going to be funding lots of good things anyway, but still there is going to be a very large funding shortfall. So the big, I guess, to keep it brief, we're in a transitional space with the Metro Spatial Plan work right now. The partners are working together to develop our own work programme now that we've finalised the PBC, and a lot of our consultant backup has disappeared into the ether. And we're, I guess, working with partners to try and see what we can afford to do to keep that momentum going in terms of moving towards more detailed design stages and some of the other smaller work pieces. What we can do really over until the next LTP can hopefully get us some more funding. We're also, part of that work stream is looking at how we continue working together, how we deliver the project. So we are dipping into areas of co-location and co-governance, noting that we are doing a lot of that already. Worth noting at the PBC stage that so your staff were co-located at certain times of the week in a premises in central Hamilton, where we worked together and got a lot of good things done, and we'd like to keep some of that momentum going. So there's a lot going on in the Metro Spatial Plan area. I won't go into it all now, but happy to answer any specific questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Are there any questions of Phil? No. Thank you for your report. Much appreciated. Right, any further discussion?
Good news day.
It's a very good news day. Yeah, well done to getting the Access Hamilton across. Yeah, thanks to all those involved. Yeah, great news. Fantastic. All right, we're going to move on to the next item, which is our final item, network performance update.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my regular update on patronage and reliability of our public transport services, including bus and rail. So similar picture to the last update that I provided. Bus patronage has begun to slowly recover, but we are still substantially below pre-COVID levels in terms of numbers of passengers. The more that time goes on, the more that I'm of the view that comparing ourselves to pre-COVID levels is a less and less useful comparison. People's movement patterns have changed. More people are working from home, definitely, and we need to take that message, and we have started, as I set out in the previous updates, to recast the bus network with that kind of that lens in mind, particularly sit through the refresh proposals that have been put forward. So, as I said in my last update, bus reliability continued to be impacted by driver shortages. So for the reduced timetables, what we've done is we've emphasised the peak services and making sure that kids are able to get to school. We've also been running a full weekend timetable, but that has been at the expense of less services operating throughout the day. Most services now are operating at around about an hourly timetable as compared to half-hourly timetable before the driver shortage, but there are still some fairly big gaps of 2 hours in certain places, which are definitely not ideal. And as you can imagine, our biggest falls in patronage have been during those off-peak periods where our service levels have been substantially reduced. So I'll just draw your attention to a new item in the report, which is a area-based report for Hamilton, and that I think quite nicely shows some of the patterns that we've seen in patronage in different areas of Hamilton City as compared to the same quarter a year prior. Some really interesting figures in there. Some of the biggest hit areas are in some of the suburbs, but around Te Rapa area where the comet passes through, we've seen only a 2% reduction compared to the same period prior, as compared to around between about 15 and 30% in some of the other areas of the city. Just an update on the fares concession. So April 1st, Crown-funded 50% fares concession was introduced. We did see a modest increase in patronage around that time. I estimate it somewhere between about 10 and 20% increase, but there was a lot going on around that time. So there is quite a large margin of error with that estimate. That fares concession has now, of course, been extended to January 2023, when the new Community Connect concession will in part replace that concession. Flex has continued to operate really strongly. So we're currently carrying about 200 passengers a week on Flex. That includes the airport and the CBD night service. We have had a few issues with driver availability on that service. And the numbers certainly indicate that if we had more drivers, then we would be carrying more passengers. So similar story as to the fixed route services. Tahuya patronage growth continues. So these aren't the latest figures in this report. I have got a copy of the latest figures with me, but they are also on the website if you're interested. Yeah, a really strong performance continues to be had by Te Huia, so that's really good news. Yeah, so just in terms of reliability, I mean, I've touched on that. Issues mainly with the services that we're not running with the reduced timetables. Yeah, it's probably concludes my update, and invite any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Questions, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just want to dig in a little bit with Flex. Obviously, driver shortages for the bus. I think bus patronage will bounce back over time, but it really concerns me for a brand new service. Is it, sorry, can you remind me, is bus at the contractor? So they're providing the drivers for Flex as well?
Go Bus provide both our urban fixed route bus
Okay.
services and the on-demand services.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are we, I suppose this is with the buses as well, are we really confident that they are doing what, going above and beyond to try and fill these gaps? Because I would have thought the challenges or the perception of what a role of driving a big bus with school kids and all sorts of, you know, the same route all the time and all those kind of complex issues would be a different job attractor than driving a new super cute smaller vehicle. Are they just saying we just need drivers? Do you have any of that detail?
I'll just add one small thing to that, in that in order to drive these on-demand buses, you don't need a bus license. You only need a passenger service license.
Right.
So my expectation would be that there would be a greater number of potential recruits out there, but I think again on contract matters, I will defer to colleagues. Sorry.
It's you.
And through you, Madam Chair, sorry, I can't provide any more than I did in respect of the bus issues, but we can continue, that same undertaking that we made in relation to, reaching out to Go Bus to see how we might be able to support or encourage their recruitment efforts. And I've got a particular note in relation to Councillor Dow's thing there. It provides some interesting possibilities, and we all know as employers outside of public transport that sometimes those seemingly small but memorable contributions to people's overall well-being can be a real kicker in terms of attraction and retention.
And I want to support that, because I haven't used Flex yet, but I'm a really big fan of them, and I keep saying how cute they look, and it's about comfort, and it's like Te Huia. I mean, again, I haven't gotten on that yet, just don't have time for these things. But it looks amazing, and people are reporting it's such a great experience. So the look and feel of a thing is just as important as the functionality and efficiency. Can you just remind me, when does the Flex trial finish? It was going to be this year, wasn't it? But we extended it because of lockdown. Whose is that one? Is that your one?
I'll take that one. So my understanding is that the Flex airport trial is a 1-year trial.
Yeah.
The night service, we're intending to do yearly reviews, but the intention is that service will continue in some form, be it on demand or be it fixed route indefinitely, because it was a service that we operated prior to COVID-19 in the Night Rider, albeit it was a substantially different service.
Okay. And we will get the opportunity at some point, or the new council will get an opportunity at some point to look at, I mean, obviously with driver shortages, we can't expand services yet. But so that one's solid. The airport one is still on trial. How are they rationalizing the drivers between the airport and the night service?
So I can answer that one. The airport service has been operating pretty much every single day. So I think we've had maybe a couple of days that they haven't been able to provide a driver since that service started. With the evening service, it's a slightly different issue in regards to that service is still operating, but it is operating with fewer vehicles than we'd like out on the road. So we've contracted for 4 vehicles to be out on the road between the hours of 6 and 4 a.m. What's actually been delivered is between 2 and 3 drivers. So what that's meant in effect is that when people have tried to book the service, that they've at busy times had a longer wait time. So instead of getting picked up in like 2 minutes, which was the experience that I had one night, which was great, it's been more like 40-minute wait. In worst cases, as an example. So there's still opportunities for people to travel on Flex, but the level of service just isn't where we would want it.
Okay. And in terms of the mechanical issues, I know the report says we sorted that out, but is that through use already, or is that I don't know what brand, because they're brand new, right? So I don't know what brand of vehicle they are, but yeah, are they?
Mercedes.
Yeah,
the
low floor accessible vehicles are a Mercedes front part of the chassis, but they have been specially engineered by a New Zealand bus manufacturer, GBV, so that they're able to basically put a low floor chassis on the back of a Mercedes van. The issues have not been with the Mercedes component; they've been with the rear part of the vehicle, and that's been to do with the door mechanism and the suspension. But those issues have been resolved now.
Okay. So, and just I guess if we could just comment, if we could note to keep a really close eye on this, because I am concerned. It's such a new and exciting service, and there are extensions in terms of, and we've got it in some of the submissions for the public transport plan for Monday, and we've had it through Hamilton City Council, many submissions from the public about the lack of service from the Frankton station when Te Huia comes in. So that would be a great opportunity for us in the future to have Flex put that put Frankton station on its route. I know that there's a bus service in Queen's Ave, but it's a bit of a walk if you've got luggage and things like that. So yeah, I just note that if we can, when we're able to, that we can start looking at the next stage of Flex. And thank you, Siri.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Yeah, some of the points that you raised around driving a Flex vehicle, I share your enthusiasm for, getting a wider range of drivers, I suppose. Well, yeah. You could. Bit of a side hustle there. Yeah. Andy, I just had a question around our real-time info devices. I know we've been waiting for them for a little while. Is there any update on where they might be at?
The on-street displays. Yep. So we've got a consultant doing technical specification at the moment. I just need to run that through with the marketing team next week, and then we should hopefully be able to take that into to tender.
Okay.
Perhaps Andy, what would we expect the typical lead time to be from tender to having new displays in operation?
The answer to that is that unfortunately I really don't know. I would expect it to be around 6 months, but yeah, sorry, I can't provide any further.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Liz.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I guess I just wanted to highlight the Waipa patronage in that report, because I think we're seeing some really great recovery post-COVID, of course. In particular, the Cambridge, we see a 6%. So I think been a little bit of a superstar for a while now, but just want to keep pushing the fact that our communities really want to see increased frequency, increased services across the day, but also in the evening as well. So when we've put on new services, they've been well patronised. So again, just want to keep, flying the flag for Waipa, saying, hey, we're there, we are really interested in continuing to advocate for some better public transport. Growth in Northern Cambridge in particular, we're going to start seeing some houses soon. So what I do understand is that setting some good habits early on is really, really important. So we've, I think, done our bit in terms of creating cycleways, trying to connect those new homeowners, of course, to the city, but also to our Cambridge community as well. So I'm really hoping we can, look at public transport right from the outset. Families wanting to move to Cambridge, I think, if they see it's in place, develop those habits nice and early. And another consideration, which I know I've said a number of times, and that is the internal public transport for Waipa too, in particular Cambridge. So this is, an example, I think, my way that we've seen, keep going on about it, Andrew and Mark's, but I think it suits Cambridge, I really do. So yeah, I'm really interested in how those, I guess those reports coming out and the trials that have been done, how successful we might be able to look to implement into our town soon. Thanks.
All right, any other questions? No. Any further discussion? No? Okay.
I'm happy to move the report.
Oh, I think we've
done that.
We've done it all at the beginning.
Recommendation, wasn't it? That's right.
Fantastic. I believe that's the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, in the room and also online. PT hearings next Tuesday, I believe. So yeah, looking forward to those. And one more Regional Connections Committee meeting this Terranium. So thank you, everyone. We will see you again. Thank you. Declare the meeting closed.